What does it take to be a serial entrepreneur? It's hard enough to launch one product, build one company, but how do people ride the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, stand up after punches, and continuously reinvent themselves and keep going? Our guest on this episode has this incredible ability to enjoy life, live and work from exciting places, and work on many exciting projects. John Harper is a director of Cambridge Machine Learning. Starting with a degree in zoology, animal behavior, John traveled into many areas. He's a machine learning engineer, Python programmer, and an award-winning tech entrepreneur. He's trained at Cambridge University, Accelerate Cambridge, and more. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups live show. I'm Naili Makangu from Machina Leaders. As a tech consultant and startup advisor, I will answer live the burning question that you have on your way to Series A+. Subscribe and tune in every week for top tips and to meet amazing guests. More importantly, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. John, welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups. Now,
thank you.
I've known you for a really long time and I got used to you dabbling into everything. And my first question when I speak to you is where you are in the world. But one thing I didn't know until just a few hours this morning is that you started in biology. So why? Why biology?
Yeah, good question. So I started off in biology. My undergrad was in zoology. I grew up loving animals. I was always curious about them. And when it came to going to university, I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and for me, it was either do I want to help animals or do I want to help humans. So I tried working in a hospital after A levels. Realized I'd rather work with animals. So I did my undergrad in zoology. And then started a career in wildlife conservation. Enjoyed my time.
Wow. So at what point did it switch from you and you think, okay, because you try people and now animals, and then now you're back to, well, tech, which kind of people involved as well. So how did you make the switch?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting switch. After I graduated, I moved out to Borneo in Indonesia to work for a charity called Orangutan Foundation International and help them with rehabilitating orphaned orangutans. I'd co-published one paper which was around assessing behaviors in lemurs to decide which ones should be released into the wild. So that's one of the reasons why I came out there, was to help to choose which individuals, what personalities, what character traits would be best to release them and for them to successfully thrive in the wild. What I found is that there are a great deal of people who work in conservation who have a lot of passion, but there's a lot more to being able to make a difference in this world than just passion. It's obviously an important trait, but to me, I realized that problem solving, leadership, resilience, and just knowing how the world works and how we can interface with business would all make a difference. So after a year there, I returned to Cambridge and I started my first social enterprise, which was based around wildlife conservation. And I just fell in love with entrepreneurship from there.
Okay, so the first one was actually still within the animal behavior world. So then how do you define even being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, good question. I mean, for me, it's essentially seeing a problem and taking the initiative to solve it and make money at the same time in order to live. That's an important one.
Yeah, I agree. Because I talk to other people who struggle with the idea of what entrepreneurship means to them. And sometimes, when you look in the world, we always see the big names, the big companies and the big startups. But I genuinely believe that there is so many different ways you can be an entrepreneur, whether it's a non-profit organization, whether it's something that you do part-time. As you said, it's all about problem solving and also making sure that you're making money in the process. So can you talk to us a little bit more about your first steps into tech, right? Because I assume, of course, you know it quite a lot when it comes to programming, machine learning, and AI. But there was a beginning, a moment where you were jumping into the industry and you thought, okay, I need to dig deep and starting learning to be where you are today. So can you kind of share with us a bit that journey into the tech world?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when I was a wildlife conservationist, I did not know tech. I mean,
Mm.
when I was living in the jungle, I literally had, one of those old phones with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the normal, and it had actually been chewed by an orangutan. So I had to use a stick to press some of the buttons, and that was the extent of my tech knowledge. My first startup that wasn't in conservation was for a mental health app called Rize, and that
Mhm.
was to create a mobile phone application. I had never
Mhm.
touched a mobile phone application in my life before, um,
Wow.
but I was just, I just thought, here's a really important problem that needs to be solved. I want to be part of this,
Mm.
and I'm pretty good at just saying. Why not? Let's just go for it. So
Mm.
I jumped in the deep end. I started networking, met some developers, met some designers, and
Mhm.
what what pushed me to actually learn to code myself is that when I started using contractors from at the time it was called Elance, it's now called Upwork, where you find
Mhm.
cheap freelancers to do odd bits of work. It frustrated me so much. I had no idea, when they gave me time estimates, was it correct? How much
Mm.
things would cost? Like, what's the actual work required? So, I had a good network of developers at this point in Cambridge who gave me some strong advice. Start learning Python. It's a very versatile language. You
Mm.
can apply it to lots of things. And I just found myself becoming pretty obsessed with it, to be honest. I was studying Python, and then I realized the applications of data science, machine learning, and
Mhm.
yeah, that's when I got excited about not only the startup that I was working on, but also other potential ideas that came into mind.
Quite interesting there. And just picking up on the fact that you pretty much self-taught yourself Python and programming in general as an entrepreneur, that must have been time consuming. It's quite hard. I get a lot of startups that, especially non-tech, from a non-tech background, they always ask the question, how much do I need to know to be able to work well with engineers? And again, from my own
Mm.
personal experience, before I went to uni to study software engineering, I just picked up a book and self-taught myself Java for about a year. And then I thought, okay, I think I like it. So
Mm.
I'm just going to go and just do the full degree in this. But it takes a lot of time. I mean, it's exciting in a way. I mean, when I code, I can spend the whole day, and then people wonder, "Oh, have you eaten?" Well, that's not important now. But it's still, when you are an entrepreneur, having to dedicate the time to learn a new language or learn a new skill, which is something that you've done incredibly well throughout your own career. So how do you manage to keep things going at business level, your startup, the ideas and the connection, anything that you need to do to grow the business, whilst on the side take the time for the in-depth learning that you need to keep on going forward?
Yeah, yeah, it's a really important point. And just before I answer that, a lot of respect to you for. I mean, I've tried to learn from a book before, and to learn Java from a book and do a year like that. Hats off to you. I mean,
Thank you.
that's impressive. I wouldn't be able to do that. So for me, it was just really important. It was a matter of need at that point. Rise was really important to me. And I was just getting so frustrated. I wasn't getting the talent that I wanted. I was trying to grow the company organically. I'm a bit stubborn in that way. I like to try and grow businesses organically rather than take early investment, which honestly I don't recommend it. I don't I don't
Yeah.
suggest that that's a good way. It's just how I work.
Mm.
It's just how I like to do it.
Yeah.
So what comes out of that essentially is that you can't hire the best people around. I mean,
Yes.
I had techies in Cambridge saying, "Listen, John, I'd love to work with you on this, but I also have to pay the rent, and rent in Cambridge is expensive." So,
Mm.
so for me, it was a need. I was like, well, and this might sound a bit strange, but I often think of myself as one of a product of myself. I need to improve myself,
Mm.
and I need to invest in myself in order for my business to be where I want it to be. So I always saw it as I'm investing in myself here. I'm investing in my skills. This for longevity of my company is going to pay off. I knew that early on. I think it's kind of it's pretty crazy for someone non-technical to go through the whole life cycle of a tech business and not know anything about technology unless they have a solid CTO co-founder.
Mm.
But for me, I was a sole founder, so it came out of necessity really, and I was just fortunate that I really enjoyed it. I was like, wow, learning to program, learning to code has its upsides, and it means you can develop your own ideas really quickly. I love to make prototypes. I love to make MVPs, put them out there quick, fail fast, all that kind of stuff. So for me, being able to code myself, it felt like a necessity for myself.
But again, I definitely understand that. But what about imposter syndrome? Because I'm sure that anybody listening right now, whichever platform you are catching us on, they probably won't asking themselves that question, right? Because obviously, this one thing learning a skill set enough to start with prototype and MVP, but there's another one to really go to the length where you are today, where you do a lot of work contracting for companies, building an application like Rize, and even more for other clients that you have at the moment, but also for creating one of the highest rated courses on the Udemy. You've got a course. Yeah. So how do you have the confidence, or how do you develop the confidence to actually just really throw yourself out there and turn off the noise that tells you that, I didn't have a PhD or MBA or whatever people use, that stops themselves from really putting themselves out there?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could answer that in detail. I don't know why I do it. I one of my favorite things to say, I can't say, but it's some word and then the word it after it, and I love saying it whenever I have the opportunity. And I tend when I first jumped into Rize, I knew nothing about technology. It worked out. Like it's fine. I mean, if you ever do an MBA, you'll see a graph of businesses, and there's one part where as soon as you get to having £0, I can't remember what they call it. It's the trough of death or something like that, where startup dies. And I remember being in a lecture and seeing that and thinking that's not actually true. Even if the business has no money, I can still keep going. I can do some guitar tutoring on the side. I can live, and I can develop myself. So I love saying, I'm just going to go for it. And imposter syndrome is something really important to talk about because it happens to everyone. It definitely happened to me because I met you at FeatureSpace, a technology company in Cambridge, and from there, the only places I've learned to code was Udemy, YouTube, and I was creating my own products in that way. And then you get to a company and they have all these they have DevOps, they have CI/CD, they have loads of different things. So I'm like, I have no idea what's going on around me. I didn't even know what a VPN was, and everyone was like, aren't you a developer here? And so there was a lot of times where I could have turned around and just been like, do you know what, I'm really not up to scratch on this. I guess I don't see the value in thinking like that. It's as simple as that to me. I don't really see the point. So far in my career, when people have turned around and they've said, listen, like, you're not good enough at this, like you're really not doing well in this, I get excited. I say, I've literally turned around to people and said, brilliant, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Because I know once I'm doing that right, then I'm going to be getting even better and better. So, but one thing that did help me was, I think it was just a blog post I was reading somewhere at some point, just saying like how many people actually experience imposter syndrome. It's a lot more than any of us expect. And as soon as you know that, and you think, well, everyone around me is having these worries as well, you can just think it's wasted energy, wasted stress, wasted time. I'm going to just focus on getting better.
Yeah, great. And in fact, it is something that rather than using that as a crutch, I feel out of place, I'm not qualified enough, or I don't have XYZ. I love the way that you've used that as using that word that you can't say and eat afterwards and just keep going. And I think, that is, I think it's a strong trait for any wannabe entrepreneur or any kind of current entrepreneur that are going through different challenges. Now, you mentioned Rize app a couple of times. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about, first of what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So it was around 2012. So it's when I'd gotten back to Cambridge from working in wildlife conservation, and I was starting up my social enterprise. And I'd never experienced mental health issues in the past, not that I know of. But I started to notice a lot of things for myself. I was starting to feel very low. Hopeless. I wasn't able to think straight a lot of the time. I lost my appetite because I wasn't sure, where my life was going. I was disenfranchised with conservation. I wasn't sure where I wanted to take things next. I ended up going to a GP, and they said you have, the mild to moderate symptoms of anxiety, depression, which surprised me to say the least. I mean, because back then mental health wasn't being talked about very much. I thought it was just for quote unquote crazy people, or people have like really big issues. And then I decided to do some research into it. They offered me antidepressants, or to go on a waiting list for, I think it was 3 or 4 months, to do some CBT therapy. And I just said, stubbornly as I am, I want to fix myself. And so they gave me a website which gave me information that I could look up on. So I started to understand my symptoms. I started to understand how many people are affected by mental health. And it just gave me suddenly my eyes were open to the fact that so many people suffer with stress, anxiety, depression, and other things. And back then there wasn't much access. No one really knew where they could get information on what's going on for them. How can they help themselves? How can they get help from other people and organizations? So that's kind of where Rize came from. I became very passionate about, I'm not a mental health professional, and I wasn't a technology professional either. So I basically reached out to technologists in Cambridge. I reached out to therapists, mental health institutions, universities, so that we could come together and work out how we can integrate therapeutic concepts into interactive exercises and audios to help people to understand, track, and improve their mental well-being. I was really fortunate to be accepted onto the Accelerate program, which you mentioned at the Judge Business School at Cambridge University, and I received training in entrepreneurship for 2 years from that, and that really helped me to grow the product. There was a big emphasis on getting your first users, testing, raising a bit of money, and growing the business. So that's kind of how Rize was born.
All right. So and then, so what happens next? You went to Judge Business School and you started having you had your app. So what's the next stage? What did you do after with Rize?
Yeah, so it was all quite an interesting process. So Rize won a few awards. We raised enough to keep developing the product. One thing I found is that users didn't really want to pay for it. So I wasn't able to grow the business that way. I pivoted to B2B. So we looked at employee mental well-being, which is, it's in my opinion, and well, from the numbers you'll see that occupational health, B2B mental well-being, there's more and more being invested into it. At this point, I've been working on Rize for by the end of Accelerate Cambridge, it'd been 2 years. I kept working on it for another year, and I was starting to reach burnout. I was pushing the business hard, but I was also waking up at 3 a.m. and studying Python for two hours before I then went on to working on Rize. And I was paying myself minimum wage at best, and I was renting in Cambridge, and I was thinking, I need to make a bit more money. And then along came the Cambridge Brain Sciences unit in Cambridge, and they asked me to develop a mental health app for them for research. And at that point, I realized that actually there was business out there to be had for developing other mental health applications for research. So I decided to take a bit of a break from Rize and start working on that. And then just out of nowhere, I applied for a program out in Rome to study AI and machine learning. I didn't expect to get it. I got a scholarship, so I went out to Rome, studied data science, machine learning, came back, and at this point there was no money coming in. I needed a new pair of shoes, so I said to myself, okay, I'm going to get a job for a bit. I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to go for it for a while. So that's when I joined Featurespace. From then on, Rize was something.
Hold on, can we put there because I've got like 5 questions at a time, so now I need to pick one where to start. Because that's quite interesting. Again, when we talk about the journey and just being an entrepreneur, startup founder, whatever, founder of any kind, there's a lot that you are talking about. A lot of people will also, maybe they've gone through that. But first, I'd like to highlight the way you constantly pivoted and really thinking about your ideas, how to change that, who else to approach, and also whilst at the same time, I love the same thread that's been going through your story is the continuous learning. To on one side, building your company, on the second one, just really investing the time, even though you didn't have that much time to continue learning. So I just wanted to really emphasize that point for other people that are listening and always wonder, whether it's possible, how to do that. Well, here is an example. Now, the second thing I wanted to ask on your transition, where you're thinking, I need a new pair of shoes. Wow, things are extremely tight. I need to take on a job. How did it make you feel? Because some people believe that when you go from running your own business to working for someone else, sometimes they see that as failure. Yet you managed to do that. And of course, we're going to continue with the journey, right? I'm sure people are still waiting on that. But can you talk us a little bit about how did you came to terms with that decision that you needed to go back 9 to 5 whilst you used that freedom and traveling and your own thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was definitely a phase of acceptance where I remember one of my mentors saying to me, John, you have to let Rize go. Like it's just like a relationship that you might have in life with someone where it's been good for a while, you've learned a lot, but then you're not bringing anything to each other. I was so stressed out by Rize, I wasn't able to make a better product, and Rize certainly wasn't bringing anything in for me at that point. So I realized I needed to let it go. Did I want to carry on going between contracts, getting research projects, where I'd create apps for other people? That in itself is also stressful. You have to do tender bids, you have to go through approvals. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I remember I was in Rome, and I was working so very hard in Rome. It was 12 hours of the school, then you had to do 4 hours of studying when you got home. And I was also trying to do a bid with a research institution, not in Cambridge. And I remember that one not going through, and I just said to myself, I can't do it anymore. I can't do entrepreneurship for a while. I need to make some solid money, so I don't need to worry about how I'm going to pay rent next month. Because keep in mind, I've been doing this for 3 years now. So it wasn't difficult for me to do the transition. What was difficult for me was letting go and accepting that I hadn't gotten to where I wanted to be. I mean, I started Rize when I was 23, 24. And I was just, like I said, I had no idea what entrepreneurship was or what tech was. I was just like, I want to have autonomy. Well, the top thing for me actually was to develop skills in problem solving and resilience. And I realized that doing a startup is a good way to do that. And then I said to myself, well, while I'm at it, I'm going to make £1 million. And I can just live off the interest, right? I'm going to do that in a year. I'm going to create an app. Everyone's going to love it. And I'm going to be a millionaire by the end of the year. So that didn't happen. So accepting that chapter of my life, and looking at what are the positives, where am I at, what do I want to do next, which I think everyone has to do a couple of times in their lives. It wasn't that hard to say, I want a new pair of shoes because I've got holes in these ones and it's a bit wet outside. I want to make some money. So if anything, it was relief. I got somewhere where I honestly can't explain it, because I'd done lots of jobs when I was a kid, but I'd never done like full-time work. And I'd never seen like paychecks that you could pay for rent, pay your bills, and then you can just have money to spend. You can go to restaurants with friends. I didn't realize that was a thing. And it was just lovely. So I thoroughly enjoyed it for a while. But I got itchy feet quite quickly. And in my spare time, I started studying more languages and more tech and stuff like that. And by the end of the year, my circumstances changed anyway. I moved from Cambridge, but I remember feeling that relief of, okay, cool. Like, what's next? What's the next adventure?
Wow, yes. And then what next brought you back out in the world and continue with Rize. So continue where we left off.
Absolutely. So what really happened with Rize? It was relatively straightforward. As soon as I left Future Space, I posted on LinkedIn, hey, because I had a good network on LinkedIn. I've just finished my job. Who wants me to do some contracting? I got some great contract work. Learned so much while I was doing that. And when now that I had good money coming in from the contracting, I'd put a bit towards Rize. At this point, I wasn't at all interested in the business of Rize. All I wanted was for it to be a cool product that could help people. And what I really realized is that I had two choices here. Essentially, either I grow a team so it could be as good as it needs to be, or I pass it on to a larger company. So that's where I started thinking about exits, acquisitions. And so very slowly I'd be putting money into Rize, getting it to a good enough point. And yeah, full disclaimer, it never actually got acquired. We got to the final stages, and it was a long process. There was a couple of businesses who were interested in the final one. It's essentially the technology got outdated. So Rize was built using Objective-C for iOS and Java Kotlin for Android. A lot of companies out there who were interested in buying it, they didn't want Objective-C. They wanted it to be made in something which was a lot more up to date, something like Swift or whatever. So essentially it didn't work out with Rize. And what I've done now is I've just left. It's on the Play Store. I've made it free to everyone to use, and it will live out its last days to hopefully being of use to people. Just as a free tool. But what I found is the contracting. What I love about entrepreneurship, what I love about startups, what I love about the dynamics of it is you never know which way things are going to go. And I found that it's better, and what allows me to pivot quite quickly. And actually, if I may, just to jump back,
go for it.
When we were talking at the start, that the one thing I've co-published is on assessing personality traits in lemurs to see which ones will be most successful in the wild. Guess what? It applies to humans and startups.
Oh, brilliant!
So who are the resilient ones? Who are the least resistant to change? Who are the most ballsy ones who say F it? So that was being able to adapt to change has been a great quality which I've enjoyed seeing develop in myself. So contracting started going really well, and then I realized that there's a lot of room for cloud, data science, machine learning, the skills that I've been developing. So that's where Cambridge machine learning came from. Small, big contracts I'm able to pick up. And now I'm fortunate enough that I can take months off, like I'm doing at the moment, to work on new ideas that come to mind.
So just to kind of close the chapter and the incredible story from Rize, and again, as you said, Rize is still alive and kicking on the App Store for anyone who wants to go out and try it out. But I guess, what have you learned from that experience of building a product, building a company, going through all of the highs and lows that you've explained to the point where you got to and says, okay, that's it. I'm now happy to close that chapter and keep on going.
So I think some of the most important things that I've learned for myself, it's almost all personal stuff. It's all around personal growth for me. I've realized, I certainly don't have ambitions to be worth 10 million, 100 million at any point. What I've realized about myself, my ambitions are to be able to have a good life and to have obviously financial security and be relatively successful. But what comes with that is you have to be, well, in my opinion, you have to be open to growth. Who I was at the start of Rize is very different to who I am now, and in a lot of ways I'm very happy with. And if I could go back and give myself some advice, it's mainly around self-care. I would say to myself, look after yourself on this journey. It's a long one. It's a tough one. Don't be too hard on yourself. And I've learned that there are some traits of myself in some ways that I like to work. For example, I enjoyed being a sole founder because it forced me to learn so many skills, but that definitely hampered the growth of my company. If I had have taken on co-founders who were up to the job, great CTO, someone who could handle marketing and sales, it could have grown a lot bigger. But because part of the reason why I love doing startups is that I'm forced to learn so much, I'm aware of what the limitations of my own approach to startups are.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's definitely something that I admire in you, is the ability to always constantly learning about yourself, changing, adapting, and just the resiliency. And again, even in my own company, when I started Athena Leaders, it's been 3 years and a bit. So I'm getting on a bit now, but it's been an incredible journey with a lot of highs and lows, with a lot of exciting moments and learning. And even just starting my podcast, I started my business being called the Mary Poppins of business. And then I had to rebrand everything to go to the Mary Poppins of startups, because I just realized that that's the world I love and I'm passionate in. And again, you go from so now I'm going to go so much into startups. Coming from larger companies, you need to start a completely new network, mindset, learning, and then all of those. So yes, it's definitely a journey. And again, when you're talking about attributes there, one of the biggest thing I've learned is patience. I always
Patience,
say
yeah.
that yes, I have a lot of skills and talents, but patience is something that I had to learn. I'm the kind of person that
Absolutely.
I have an idea. I'm like, yes, I'm excited. I jump straight in and I start working. I'm like, what's the result? And I'm like, yeah, okay. When you code is great. I think that's what I love about coding. You write, you run it, yes, I work, no, I don't
Yeah.
work. But when you run a business, you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
What do I need to
Where's that million? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So now I think for anyone watching, yeah, again, if you have any question for John, please do put it in the chat. Even if we don't respond now, we definitely find you online. Do remember to subscribe. And there is still more to go on, because I really want to find out more what Cambridge Machine Learning is up to right now. So for those who missed the beginning, we went through an incredible journey. I mean, from animal behavior, zoology, to learning to code, different languages, building a company, and so much more, living around the world. So it's been quite incredible. But now that you are back and working on new ideas, because I'm pretty sure that you are doing that in between, playing the guitar and music lessons. Yes, I forgot about that as well. So can you tell us a little bit what you are currently doing with Cambridge Machine Learning? Because I believe that is really exciting as well.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks. So yeah, I recently finished a project in telecoms and data science, and I've decided to take a few months to work on a new idea, which I've just in and around networking in Cambridge, talking to different businesses, other entrepreneurs. I should mention, if you're an entrepreneur in Cambridge, there's a group of us entrepreneurs. We go wild swimming every Sunday morning, and
Oh, great.
it is great. And we often talk about business needs, and this is I've been able to throw my ideas around with them. So essentially, what I've realized is there are a lot of businesses who don't have the internal resources for cleaning big data and analyzing it. So what I'm creating is something called AutoDS. It's as simple as a company either provides us with access to their database, or they literally just go into their account on our website, they upload a CSV, and automatically the data is cleaned and analyzed. And then with them having to do nothing. So it's all done on the cloud. It's event driven. It happens very fast, and it can be done for any different industry. And the way that it's cleaned, the way that it's analyzed is top industry data science standards, and using AI to work out actually what type of data is this and what kind of cleaning needs to be done. So I've spent the last few months, like you say, I've absolutely loved going back to coding myself. So I've been coding out the pipeline myself, which has been fantastic. And yeah, the MVPs are going to be ready in about a month's time. So I'm going to be looking for small businesses, basically any businesses or individuals who need this kind of service to do some basically do some testing for me, see if it works for them before I put it out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep that in mind as well, because as I was telling you earlier, one of my clients, we're building a recruitment and HR app.
Mm,
We're at the point where we're getting ready to go to one of our clients and to get some data. And as you know, the most exciting part is always what kind of what data you're gonna get, what state is it going to be in, and the amount of
yeah,
time it takes to clean that. So I'm excited to hear that you're working on a solution, because I believe that
mm,
this is one of the biggest problems, even in the company where we work, where we met
mm,
when we were working together, the same
yeah,
company, and beyond. Having good, clean data from clients is and small businesses is very difficult. And in fact, even
mm,
for businesses that want to engage with consultant and work on, or even other companies to work on their own data, it will be interesting for them to clean up so that they can even do more analysis in-house as well. So I think there's a big application in what you're doing.
absolutely. I think most of all, it's just going to save time. Businesses
Mm.
will save a lot of time on doing the stuff that could be automated, so they can do the important stuff.
So, as you said earlier in this episode, that you believe in growing organically, right? Is
Mm.
that the same approach that you are using for Cambridge Machine Learning, and especially for the product that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I say, I like to go with my gut most of the time, and I find that if I'm borrowing money, or if I've got investment that I know, other people are waiting to get their return on that, it occupies a big part of my mind. I prefer to find something that can make money quick, and then scale
Mhm.
it, and add my own fuel to the fire. So yeah, unless a crazy offer comes my way, I'm very happy to grow this organically.
Yeah. And for other founders out there that probably wondering, oh, that's all well and good, but how do you survive? One of the things that you've mentioned, right, is again, with whatever time you have left, you've created an amazing you created an amazing course as well. That
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about the course and why you felt the need to put it out there? Because I believe it's like one of the really good performing one on Udemy.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like you say, everything I do, I'm definitely not advising people to not go for investment. It's incredibly helpful. It's just what suits me.
Mhm.
And when I properly realized that, and I thought to myself, I want to be able to work on things without the pressure of how am I going to pay rent next time. Obviously, passive income came to mind. Now there were, and there still are, a great deal of good courses out there and tutorials on how to code. They all frustrated me, and they were for specific reasons. Often they were taught by very smart people, who weren't necessarily great at teaching, and they'd miss gaps out. They'd maybe do a set of tutorials, but not actually keep the code up to date, or they might not. They might not test it on someone first. They might not, because they wouldn't test it on someone else to see if it makes sense. So we have some amazing instructors here in Cambridge. Rob Percival being one of them. He's one of the top Udemy instructors in the world. He does
Mhm.
very well for himself, and he did one on making mobile apps. And he was very very generous with his time. We sat down and we chatted, and I told him that I really see a gap in the market for an extensive course that takes someone from knowing nothing, just like I did, to learning to do
Mhm.
full stack web development, data science, machine learning, and how to integrate that all together into a product. So it's a big project, but like I say, he was very generous with his time and advice. He said, John, the first thing you need to do is make it practical from the first lecture. You need to make
Mhm.
everything as practical as possible, because what you've got out there at the moment, people talking, and that's
Yeah.
not what people want or need these days. They need to be given quick, practical solutions, and then encouraged to apply these into different areas, into their
Mhm.
own use their own creativity to develop something. So yeah, I created this online course. It became a bestseller for a while. It got well
Mhm.
reviewed. So it's on Udemy. I think it's called Full Stack Web Development with the AI these days. But yeah, so that was a good passive income, which meant I didn't have to worry about where my next paycheck was coming from. And that's given me the flexibility to sometimes take on risky contracts, which
Mhm.
sometimes they've paid off. And that means that I've been able to save up enough that I can take off these months and work on even riskier projects. But I've having something like the online course, which is pretty reliable. It's steady income each time. It means I can take risks now without worrying about my basic level of living, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, that's a really great model. I mean, I talk a lot about workplace playground and being able to have fun in your work, and you definitely have created that in your own life, right? Where everything is a playground. What am I going to do? And I love your problem solving, because I also have this problem solving. When I see a problem, I think about how to fix it, and how you've applied that in every little aspect of your life and your business. Is what is the main issue now? Making money. How do I fix that by doing X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
But then it allows you to continue with your core mission and that you are currently doing with Cambridge machine learning. And then thanks again for sharing how you even build the course, because I mean, for other founder out there, especially those who might be bootstrapping or really early stage or struggling to get investments, it's a kind of a nice way of thinking about how do I lessen the pressure on just existing and going out for a meal and the things that keeps us sane in between. And in fact, yes, yeah.
Just on that.
Go ahead.
Just on that note, if anyone out there is looking to start a course and they think, I need to save up for a good camera, I need to get X, Y, and Z. My total investment was £14 for a USB mic on Amazon, and that was it. I had a really old iPhone where the storage was so bad I could only film one video at a time, and I had to upload it and then delete it from my phone. And I filmed so much of it in front of a fire door. That was my backdrop, a fire door. So it's not plugging taking the course itself, but you should check out. So I'm on udemy.com/unicorn, but spelt with AI instead of a single I. And just take a look at the introduction video. That's in front of a fire door. I was actually going through a really tough. I was actually going through a breakup at the time, so I have a breakup beard that's really huge. Yeah, and so anyone thinking about starting a course, it costs like 15 quid. Just honestly, just get started, and just do it, and you don't need everything to be perfect.
Yeah, now that you've mentioned the breakup, I picture you, John, with with the beards and everything, recording the course for a couple of hours and sitting down with a bit of ice cream to cheer yourself up, and then going back to record the course again.
It was actually Domino's pizza. I had way too much Domino's pizza for that month.
Oh, brilliant! Yes, okay. Yours is pizza, mine is ice cream. But yeah, well, there you go. Even through a breakup, you can still continue working on your business, because at the end of the day, life never stops. It's been incredible, and I'm sure that I'm gonna bring you back on the podcast again in 2023. There's so many angles. I'm just gonna pick one, and even just this idea of courses and passive income, which I think is something that you've done amazingly. It's a topic that I'd love to explore again in the future. Now, before we go, again, how can people find out more about you, and what's your final advice to any entrepreneurs out there?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for John Harper. The profile picture kind of looks like I'm 12 in it, so just look for a younger version of me. If you want to check out my music, I'm just recording my next album. You can go on Instagram, JH Music with an that's an A on the end. I really try to avoid giving advice. I think this is just my personal opinion, but I used to go to a lot of conferences, a lot of talks where people were giving advice to entrepreneurs. And I feel like there's enough advice out there to fill entrepreneurs' heads with, especially at the early days. So if I were to do it again, I would go to less conferences. I'd just get started. I would just start doing whatever it is. I'd start trying to create the app. I'd start trying to find a co-founder. I'd start ordering my Dominoes and getting the course started. But there's so much value in doing something and learning that way. That's my 50 cents.
Yeah, thanks, John, for coming on board. And again, I hope that anyone listening, if you've got a lot on, if you missed the beginning, I do advise that you go back, because it's been such an incredible journey and story. And again, as this episode is being recorded whilst we are going through the Entrepreneurship Week, I believe that I found one of the best entrepreneurs that I know and that the world needs to know about. And again, I believe that despite everything you've done, you're still on the first part of your journey. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in your future, and definitely let's keep in touch.
Absolutely.
And again, this episode does remind, my favorite tagline is pretty much lived by John in his everyday life and by many other entrepreneurs out there. So do remember, dream, build, and play. Let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.